What's up, strongest men, women, and children from blocks all around the world? I am my block's strongest man with my esteemed co-host Isaac from Hunger Smash Fitness. We are here on Strong and Stronger, our weekly strongman highlight show, and we're going to start our series this week with some of the most accomplished strong women in the world to tell their stories and their journeys to help our audience get empowered about succeeding in their own goals. So let's start off today by welcoming our special guest. We have Becca Lorch, Gabi Burgholzer, and Liefia Ingalls. Hi, ladies. How are you?
I'm good.
Hello.
How's it going?
So thank you all so much for joining. This is like a super duper treat for us and for our audience. I want to start off just by kind of talking about how you got into Strongman. Whoever would like to go first.
I guess I'll go first. I got into Strongman. I followed sort of like a typical path, I think, for a lot of women. In that when I first started working out, which was after a really bad motorcycle accident, so I like smashed my leg into a million pieces. I had to have three surgeries over 2 years. And so I just started working out after that for the first time like in my whole life, because I found out that it was good for me to do and would make my life a lot easier having had all these injuries. So then I kind of like found more bodybuilding style training first, which I think is pretty common. Really fell in love with that. I thought it was super cool. I really wanted to like put a lot of muscle on. And then through that, I realized at some point that the dieting and this sort of subjective nature of bodybuilding wasn't necessarily going to be super healthy for me. I also had a long history of eating disorders. So I found powerlifting, which I thought was awesome because all I could do was focus on strength, which is objective. You know, if you lift 300 pounds, you lift 300 pounds. There's no one who's like, well, your serratus looks a little uneven on the left. So I thought it was a lot better for me. Definitely mentally, it was a lot healthier for me to do. And after a few years in powerlifting, I was just a little bit bored. And a couple of guys who went to my powerlifting gym trained Strongman. And I had seen that and I thought it was cool. And I just sort of asked them if I could join them one day. And then one thing led to another. And here we are 5 years later.
So I'm assuming with Strongman, you're finding the variety of events a lot more exciting than the standard 3 in powerlifting?
Yeah, I mean, the variety of events for sure. I think the variety of sort of like endurance needs, whether it's a maximum lift or something you're doing for 60 seconds or 90 seconds, being, you know, the needing to move fast and also be athletic versus just strong. There's a certain amount of, I think Strongman is a lot more technical than powerlifting. It requires you to be super technical overhead loading. I think it's a little bit more dangerous in some regards. So it just is something that was a lot more mentally stimulating for me, which, you know, even now there's things that I'm still learning after several years in the sport. So I think in that regard, it keeps me kind of always tuned in and interested.
And then Gabi, how about you? What has been, how did you find Strongman and kind of what has been your journey there?
So my journey started about 8 years ago when I joined the United States Army. And as a soldier, we are generally, we have to stay fit, you know, to do our duties, to protect the country. So I started off by just regularly going to the gym, and eventually somebody approached me and said, hey, I think you would be a great candidate to do bodybuilding. So I got into it. I started my first prep, and along the way, I noticed with the dieting, my strengths decreased over time. And I told my coach, I was like, I don't like this. I don't like losing strength. And he looks at me and he says, well, it really doesn't matter what you lift on stage. The judges are not going to ask you how much you can bench or squat or deadlift. All they care about is what you look like. And at that moment, it almost like a light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, but I care. I don't care as much of what I look like. I care more about how much I can lift. So after my first bodybuilding show, I decided to look into other sports. And first I tried CrossFit for a couple months. Wasn't really my thing. Then I tried myself in arm wrestling. It was fun for a little bit, but it was still not the right thing for me. So one day I went to the gym and I saw this guy in the corner just lifting extremely heavy weights. So I asked him if I could start jumping in on this workouts. And he's like, of course. So we started lifting together for a couple of weeks. And eventually he's like, hey, on the weekends, we do some crazy stuff. We go pick up really heavy things that are usually oddly shaped. And we either push them overhead or we carry them. Do you want to jump in? And I was like, of course I do. That sounds like so much fun. So that's kind of when I started doing strongman. And eventually the Army reached out to me. They have been following me on Instagram, watching my lifting videos. And they asked, hey, would you want to try out for the US Army Warrior Fitness team? We have a strongman section on the team. And that kind of, it was a dream come true for me, because now I could actually take my passion and make it into my career. So back in 2019, August 2019, I then joined the US Army Warrior Fitness team and officially started my journey as a strongman competitor.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that team. How is it structured? Kind of like how many team members are there? Just some things that the audience might like to know about the Army Warrior Fitness team.
So there are currently 15 members on the team. There's 2 to 3 strongman competitors at a time and about 12 to 13 CrossFitters. We're actually currently, we had tryouts a couple months ago, and we're waiting to get our new members to join us on the team. We're stationed at Fort Knox, Kentucky. So we actually train full time and focus all of our efforts into competing. And what that does for the Army is it's helping in the recruiting efforts. So we go to those competitions, and after the competition, we usually take time and talk to regular people about the Army and the opportunities the Army has, as well as go to local high schools and talk to the students about the benefits of the Army.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, are you allowed to speak about what the qualification exercises are to make the team?
So they vary, of course, because we have the strength side with the strongman team and the CrossFitters. Not too aware of the CrossFit side, but on the strength side, we are looking for somebody who is either already a pro or close to pro level. So if you are competing already at nationals or at the Arnold, that's what we would be looking for.
High standards, indeed.
Absolutely. We only want the best.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Yeah, we'll circle back to that for a little more detail later. So, Liefia, why don't you tell us our story about how you encountered strongman and kind of your journey?
Okay. So my journey with strength training and really kind of athletics in general started after college. I had a desire for a few different reasons, but just to get in better shape, but also specifically to get stronger. And I was, by comparison to today, unbelievably weak. And I took an interest in just generic lifting. I started searching for stuff online. One of the first things that I was like exposed to, or the first like representation of women lifting that I saw, was women's CrossFit competition. That was the first time I saw like powerful, strong, like jacked women doing what looked like really cool stuff. So I was like, okay, well, I don't know what this is about, but I need to get involved in that. So I went that way. I joined a CrossFit gym. I started lifting, and I got that's where I got introduced to like, barbell basics. But the whole process of that, me starting lifting and starting to gain strength, was it was just like this really exciting adventure for me, because when I started out, I had no aspiration of being really strong. And actually, I really thought I wasn't. I spent my whole life being really like not playing any sports. I considered myself a non-athlete. So my introduction to this world, to this culture, I thought it was something that I definitely wouldn't be good at, but I just wanted to try and learn and do some of it. And as I started to train, I started to get strong quickly. I started to notice that I was stronger than other people around me, that I had a propensity for it. And so it just reinforced itself. Like, I started out with this idea of like, oh, I want to try and get a little bit strong. And then I was like, wow, I can actually do a lot of things now that previously I thought would have been impossible for me. So it became this mental exercise of kind of finding the next thing, or finding the next mental barrier in my mind that I could break down. So I was like, well, I used to think it would be impossible for me to deadlift 300 pounds. Now I deadlift 300 pounds. So I guess now I'll see if I can do 4. And so my my interest in strength was just, it was really reinforcing and it built up really quickly. So I was also really interested in this idea of extremes. So I didn't really, it as much as I wanted to like lift a lot and be strong, I wanted to try different stuff. And it was this constant pursuit of like, what ridiculous thing can I do? So I didn't know that strongman competition was available, but I had seen some strongman, like World's Strongest Man online. And I had also around the same time started to get into training and coaching other people in strength. So I took an interest in strongman mechanics and strongman implements because they seemed really interesting, really versatile, and really challenging. So I was like, okay, well, I want to learn how to use these implements, learn about the stuff. And I was watching a YouTube video on how to pour concrete to make Atlas stones. I was going to figure out how to make these stones. And in the suggested videos was a thumbnail of a woman loading an Atlas stone in competition. And that was, you know, obviously everything builds up to itself, but that was the moment that I decided I would do this, because that was the moment I realized it existed, that there was, okay, here was a woman, she was loading a stone, she was in a competition, people were watching, people were cheering. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I want it in. Like, I want to do that. So that immediately I was like, then I'm Googling, okay, how to start strong woman competition, how to figure it out. I found Strongman Corporation website that lists local competitions. I found the next immediate local competition that I could enter. That was California Strongest Man in 2013. I signed up. They let me in. I competed. And then from there, it was just, you know, everything just built on itself. Every competition made me want to do another one, made me want to try what was, you know, try and see what I could do next.
And how long was the time period between, you know, the evolution that it took you to get from that's an insurmountable weight to deadlift to, you know, I got this? Like, how many years was that?
Well, it depends. I still think there's a lot of things I don't got. But there's also the mindset that I have now, which is that like anything along that continuum is achievable. It's just a matter of time and preparation and maybe decision making and sacrifice. So that has totally changed. But I think like from 2013, for my first competition, I don't know how to describe that. It didn't happen succinctly. Like when I did my first contest, that was what showed me like, okay, I can compete in this. Maybe I can get good at this competition. So I'll do another one. Then I did the next one. Then that one made me realize that I had the potential to like be competitive. Right. And it just went along in that direction. But I never really had my sights on the end result until I was like one step away, if that makes sense. Like I never considered I was going to go to nationals until I like qualified for nationals. And then once I was at nationals, I wasn't, you know, also the pro crest didn't exist. So I wasn't like expecting to make it pro. Like I was always just kind of in the step that I was at and looking at what was the next, you know, what was the next way that I could expand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think attainable goals is really important. Some people try something, they get, you know, demoralized when they can't get it the first time. And that's why I think stories like this are really important to say, you know, it's a slow evolution over time and you keep at it. And then little by little, small goal by small goal, you get to a big goal. So that's why I think we find, you know, great value in stories like this. So the next thing I was wondering, and Isaac, jump in anytime. Don't let me overrun you here. But the next thing I was wondering is just your various stories to become pro. So Rebecca, would you like to go first there? Like what was, how did you become pro? What was kind of your journey there?
Oh yeah. I don't think I expected to be a pro at all. When I first started Strongman, I was working with the same coach for several years, and I had acquired like my second or third sort of blown out back injury. I guess in 2018, and at that point I was just kind of like, man, I was really getting kind of just like, I don't know, felt like I was sort of at the end of my rope because I already deal with so many historical injuries from my motorcycle accident and a broken ankle from a skydiving accident. But I just, you know, it was my second or third back injury that like laid me up for a week, and I was starting to get really frustrated, and I decided at that time that I was going to leave that coach because I was like, well, I just feel like this isn't working. And a friend of mine I'm very close to, Alec, who's still my coach to this day, was like, you know what? He was a coach and trainer at the time, mostly working with Olympic weightlifters and just general fitness. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to put you through a series of programs that's basically just going to be meant to get your back healthy again so that you don't have to deal with throwing your back out anymore. And then next year, when you feel better, we'll find you a different strongman coach. So that kind of led through to the next summer, and then I was feeling pretty good, and I was like, all right, I think I can get stronger now. And I picked a show to go to, and he was like, you know what? I kind of want to like investigate this a little bit more. The strongman thing, I think I can program it really well. Let's see what happens. So he programmed me for that competition. I ended up competing in the middleweight class in that competition because there were no lightweights signed up. So I was like, I'm not going to cut weight. There's no one for me to compete against. So I competed as a middleweight, and then I was like, maybe they will just let me compete as a lightweight at nationals since there were literally no lightweights. And of course, that was not going to be the case. And Dion was like, yeah, no, you have to compete as a middleweight. And I was like, well, fuck. So I found another show like in Maine, like 4 weeks later, that had the silliest events. There was like a rebar bend, there was a chain yoke press, like just like one of those events where you're like, you guys just sat and thought of the silliest events that you could put in this competition. So it had passed the entry deadline, and I remember I like reached out to the promoter. I was like, can you please let me do this show? I have to do this show to get my lightweight qualification for nationals. And he messaged me back and he said, well, there's no lightweight signed up, so it's not going to help you. And I was like, no, if I weigh in as a lightweight and compete in the open, then I'll still be able to qualify. So I actually weighed in for that show as a lightweight, competing as an open, and there were only like 4 people in the class, and I ended up winning anyways, which was a surprise to me. But so I got my lightweight qualification for nationals there, and I was like, fuck yeah, this is awesome. I had only qualified for Strongman Corporation one other time, like 3 years prior, and I didn't go. And I had FOMO about this, like for the 3 years after until I went finally, because like I didn't go because I kind of did the classic, well, I'm not strong enough to lift any of these weights. I'm going to zero these events, so I'm not going to go to this nationals. And then I saw everybody go and all my strong friends like posting on the internet, and I felt super FOMO about it. And I was like, I'm never going to do that again. So anyways, I qualified for nationals. I was like, sick. This is my time to go and just see how I'll do in Strongman Corporation, because I think most people would say that, you know, the more elite competitors are in Strongman Corporation than are at USS Nationals, at least in my experience anyways. And I had gone to USS Nationals as a 148 and placed third like a year or two years prior, and then I broke my ankle, and then I made a comeback. And I honestly just like went thinking like, if I place top 8, that's cool. And then I remember after day 1, like I was in 3rd or 4th place. And Daphne Zhang was in 1st place by like 15 points, like, or 10 points or something. Everyone was like, Daphne's got this in the bag. Daphne's winning. And I was like, okay, yeah, it looks like Daphne's going to win. And I remember Alec was like, you're winning this. Mark my words. I'm telling you right now, you're winning. And I was like, okay, crazy. I was like, I don't need to win. Like, it's cool if I place 3rd place. Like, that's pretty cool. So anyways, so then lucky for me, my best events were on day 2. And it ended up that I just skyrocketed because I placed like 1st or 2nd in both of those events. And then, yeah, and I remember just like, I would have gotten my pro card, obviously, even if I had placed 3rd at nationals. Top 3 get their pro card in the division. But like, I just remember like realizing that I had won the whole show and just like frantically crying and like being a mess, because I honestly, I didn't even expect to be top 3. Like I was just going to go there and see where I would be, because I had never been in Strongman Corporation Nationals before. It was my first nationals as a lightweight competitor. There were all these firsts for me, and I was like, I don't know, man. There's some really crazy strong. I mean, Daphne Zhang too. Liefia coaches her. Like, she is a crazy strong. She's a freak. So like the fact that like that whole thing turned out like it did, I just remember I was like speechless about the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, that's how I became a pro, and ever since then it still seems surreal to me most days. But yeah, I totally didn't expect it. I just went in there just thinking about myself, just trying to not do anything that would be bad for me, and then I was a pro all of a sudden.
I mean, you carried on the momentum through America's Strongest Woman, which we'll get to in a moment. Both you and Gabi did. So speaking of Gabi, what has your journey been to becoming a pro?
So comparatively very short to Rebecca's. I competed at my first Strongman sanctioned competition in June of 2019. Qualified for nationals at the competition, and 5 months later I went to nationals, podium, then got my pro card. So quite a short time, and I'm still very new in the sport as it is. I've been doing Strongman for about 1.5 years now, so definitely shorter than everybody else's. I do think I had a better foundation coming into the sport because I was bodybuilding prior to. So I had already trained those major muscle groups and all those little stabilizer muscles that we're supposed to show off on stage, as Rebecca knows about. So yeah, quite short, but it's gotten me to where I am today. Like Rebecca, won America's Strongest Woman, and looking forward to more pro competitions coming up.
And also overhead Mauser block record holder, let me add.
Totally forgot about that. Yes. Did set that world record in January. Looking forward to hopefully somebody beating that record, and so I can set it again next year.
Yeah, as we mentioned when I interviewed you, I think you had more in the tank, so I'm sure you will beat it again.
I did. I even asked David Waters, was the promoter of the competition, ask him, hey, can I have a fourth attempt? Can we make this happen? I can do more. Sadly, that's not how it goes, but I'll be back. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned him. He messaged me today. He said, "Are you ready for Mammoth 6?" Yeah, sure. So is Gabi.
Absolutely. We actually talked about it today, so I cannot wait. Not sure if he's promoting it already, but he's actually going to do a pro women's division for Mammoth 6 coming up, which is new. So looking forward to competing in that as well.
Yeah, it would be great to see all three of you there. That would be something to see for sure. So Liefia, what's your story on becoming pro?
How did I become a pro? So I was part of the first initial class of pro cards that were awarded, and ours was done retroactively. So I had no intention or expectation of becoming a pro when we competed. In fact, prior to that, we were told many times there would not be a women's pro division that was going to be created. So it kind of was a surprise. I was on vacation in Japan, and I got a Facebook post that Strongman Corporation was creating a women's pro class, and they awarded the cards to the top performers at that year's Amateur Arnold World Championship. So then I was, and then I competed in the first women's pro competition that we had, which was Strongest Woman in the World in 2000. No, I'm forgetting now the years. Yeah, doesn't matter. 2016, maybe. Don't quote me on it, but somewhere around there. Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to some athletes from abroad, and they don't even even the guys don't even have a concept of pro like we have, which is very interesting.
It's interesting because a lot of people in other countries don't have the same concept of pro that we have, where they don't have a designated league for pro competition. But a lot of athletes in other countries actually live more of a pro lifestyle than we do. So because they actually even though they don't have a separate category that they compete in, they actually get paid professionally to compete. Like
interesting. Yeah. Athletes like Olga, for example, she's on TV all the time, and I think just generally has more recognition.
Yeah. So, and she's a great example of that, because she doesn't have like where they have this. A lot of places strongman is much, much smaller. Like we have a massive amount of participation here compared to like every other country.
Yeah, we need to make a change there. Keep making some noise until that changes for sure. So shall we jump back to the America's Strongest Woman topic and kind of both Gabby and Rebecca can talk about your experiences there. Let's say, Rebecca, you can go first. Kind of how you got invited, what you thought of the events, your overall experience there.
Yeah, so you don't have to be invited to America's Strongest Woman. If you're a pro, you can sign up. So there's no invite system there. I actually last year was planning on doing pretty much just official strongman games because the two competitions would have been really close together. And I am, in my mind, I have no business being a lightweight, so I can only really make that cut so many times a year and so close together. So last year I basically was just planning on doing OSG. And then OSG got postponed to this year. And I really just wanted to compete. And the only pro thing that was happening because of the, situation in the world, we'll call it, was America's Strongest Woman. And it was pretty close by. It ended up being moved from California to South Carolina, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia. And so it wasn't too far away. It was like a shorter flight, super manageable. And the events looked really fun. A friend of mine who lives pretty close to me, Joelle Peachy, was also doing it. So it just seemed like a good fit. And I was actually coming off, last year was kind of a weird year for me because I had gotten my pro card in the end of 2019. I was feeling like, pretty confident. And then I had objectively the worst competition I've ever had at the Arnold in March of last year. I placed 10th and like, I think 5 people that I beat 3 months before beat me. I just I did worse on 3 events than I did in training. So it was just a really bad showing for me. So after that, 2 weeks later is when the whole world kind of shut down. My job closed. And I was staying with my mom for a little while. So I was I went through kind of a short string of depression, you might say. And then I decided at some point that I was just not going to be a person who was going to be upset and feel depressed about, having just come off this really bad loss and then having some things going on in my personal life that were really shit, and then the world being shit and everything being closed. So I just decided that I was going to attack that whole year and just really focus on, if I didn't have to work 60-hour weeks anymore, which I used to do. I used to work 50 or 60-hour weeks in, Equinox, which is a luxury fitness facility, managing a team of 40 trainers. I was like, you know what, if I don't have to do this, I'm going to spend this whole year just focusing on being essentially a professional athlete. And, I was still getting paid from work and I didn't have to work. So that was nice. And I just invested in myself. I really just did everything I could to invest in myself. I moved out of Manhattan. I was sharing a 3-bedroom apartment in Manhattan at the time. I moved out of Manhattan into an apartment in Brooklyn that has a backyard where I built this gym, which, as you guys can see, is fully outfitted with just about anything that I was going to need. And I just started working out here. I was looking for where are all the holes in my performance as an athlete, outside of competition. What could I do better in terms of nutrition? What could I do better in terms of my recovery? What could I do better in terms of my mental space? How can I train better? My coach spent a lot of time kind of also started thinking on what went wrong in my Arnold prep. How can we fill those holes? And that's what I did last year. I just relentlessly pursued being the best athlete I could be. And obviously that paid off. There were 4 lightweight competitors at ASW, and all of us were incredibly good competitors. You have Joelle Peachy, who's great. She's been a pro for a few years now. She did I want to say strongest woman in the world last year. She had gotten her pro card the year before that. She's a great competitor. Laura Anderson, who is like the OG lightweight competitor, like has constantly been on podiums almost basically every time she's ever competed, has a crazy deadlift. And then Kristen Graham, who's a newer competitor, but also very, very good. So, you know, I went into that show feeling confident, but knowing that I was going to have to work really hard, especially because, you know, me, Laura, and Joelle all have very similar strengths besides the deadlift for Joelle. I was not really as familiar with Kristen's strengths, but I knew that like Joelle and Laura were going to push me really, really hard on things like the arm over arm and the carry and load, and the Husafel carry that Joelle went like 500 feet on. So I knew they were going to push me really hard in the events that I am the best at, because they're also really strong in those things. So I was like, I went into it feeling confident, but knowing I was going to have to work really, really hard. And the whole experience was great. I want to just shout out Jackson real quick, who is an amazing promoter and put on a really, really great show for the athletes. But yeah, I mean, you know, all that hard work that I put in last year obviously turned up really well for me. And that's just how that went.
Awesome. Speaking of that, by the way, any of you feel free to shout out anything you would like throughout this telecast. No problem at all with that. And speaking of shout outs, let's take a break to let everybody know who's watching to make sure and like this stream, subscribe to My Block Strongest Man, and then when it's all over, go over and subscribe to Isaac at Hunger Smash Fitness. Follow us both on Instagram as well. He's Hunger Smash Fitness. I am My Block Strongest, because IG wouldn't give me the last 3 characters. What are you going to do? Make sure and do all those things. And let's go on. So, Gabi, what was your experience at America's Strongest Woman? You also, so just for anybody watching, we have 2 of the 3 winners, lightweight Rebecca and middleweight Gabi, Jessica Fithen being the other one. So 2 of the 3 are here with us today, and that's why it's great to get this America's Strongest Woman perspective. So, Gabi, what are your thoughts about kind of your thinking going into it, how the events unfolded for you, and all those sorts of things?
So just like Rebecca, I signed up. I was actually one of the first people to sign up for it, and started training early on, but then due to the world situation, it got rescheduled. Had a couple of actual personal things going on at the time, and just didn't really feel like my mental state was in the right place to actually compete. And one of my coaches, Kim Dirks, she sat down with me and she talked me through it, and she said, you know what, just go. This is your first pro show. You can finally see how you compare to all the other pros in the world, because I hadn't competed against that many pros before. And I think it was said that it was one of the most stacked middleweight classes there has ever been in a pro show. So after talking to her, I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go. I'm going to give it my all, and I'm just going to have fun with it. And I think that kind of like mental switch actually helped me win the competition, because I didn't feel as much pressure as I had felt at Nationals or at the Arnolds. So I knew that the events, most of them were really good for me, because I'm really good at static lifts. Was a little worried about the last event, the sandbag onto the platform event. Didn't do so well on that one, but the other events, the circus dumbbell and the deadlift, were definitely my top events. Ended up doing 15 reps on the deadlift at 425, I think it was. Blew actually my own expectations out of the water. So yeah, it was almost like an emotional roller coaster leading up to it, and it was definitely worth it that I actually ended up showing up for it.
And so you have to be a pro to qualify for that competition, correct?
Absolutely, you have to have a pro card to actually register for it.
Cool. Did you 2 cross paths with Jessica at all? Was that kind of fun catching up?
Oh, absolutely. I actually sat next to her in between events, and she's just such a hoot. She's always joking around, and it almost makes me a little jealous of the heavyweights, because they don't have to cut weight, so they're not stressed out about anything. They're just having a blast the entire time they're there. So actually, because of her, I decided to enter as a heavyweight 2 weekends ago at a competition, and I got my national qualifier. So if there is an opening for me to compete at nationals this year as a heavyweight, I will.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, by the way, at Mammoth Strength, she was like your biggest cheerleader. It was so cool when you were going for the record breaker. She's, come on! It's awesome.
She's amazing. I think she's probably the biggest supporter of strong women there is. I mean, I just love her to death.
Yeah, I've had her on for an interview as well. She's awesome. Yeah, I mean, she has a reputation for being like, I don't know, like her name filthy, but I found her so nice and cool, and I didn't get it. Like, she was just cool to me.
Oh, she absolutely is. I mean, every once in a while she does make some filthy jokes, so I guess that's where the name comes from. I don't know.
There's a whole story about her for anybody watching. Go check out my interview with Jessica Fitton, and you'll see the whole story about where the nickname came from. So, Isaac, did you want to jump in with anything? I've been talking quite a bit.
Nothing in particular. I was going to say, looks like you have a couple fans in the comments there. Farmstrong was saying that he loves seeing the legend Liefia on the stream. So there you go. And then also, yeah, there you go. 2 monster up and comers on here. So there you go. You got some fans watching at least. And then
that's Joshua Hillen, by the way. He competes out of the Indiana Strong contingent with Christina Bangma.
Yeah. I think he's our stream's largest fan, at least. I'm not sure about otherwise though. And then Gabi, so I wanted to ask you a little bit because so you said that you're stationed in Kentucky with and so does the Army provide like strongman implements and everything for you, or do you have to supply your own, or how does that work exactly?
So before I even got to Fort Knox, the Army had set aside a warehouse and built a gym inside the warehouse. And as we were all trickled in and PCS to move to Fort Knox, Kentucky, they just asked us what we needed, and we gave them pretty much a list. And we pretty much have every strongman implement that you could possibly want. So it's definitely a dream come true. At the facility, we also have an outside area so we can train our moving events like yoke and farmers. So we pretty much have anything we need, and if there's a competition coming up with a new implement, I just request it, and most likely it gets approved and we get it.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I know, being in the Navy, it was really interesting seeing different gyms on different bases because some of them haven't been updated since 1930s maybe, and then others, get updated every couple years depending on who's in charge of the base and everything. So, I was just wondering if you're working with a bunch of hand-me-downs from Paul Anderson's time, or if you had something a little more up to date.
No, so luckily most of our equipment is brand new. I also got to order some stones. We have, I think, 23 stones, everything from 115 to 456, I want to say. So yeah, we're pretty set on everything, and like I said, everything's brand new. So I think the Army did something definitely right here.
By the way, another comment from Josh Hillen in the comments. He would like all of you to do the Iron Warrior Pro. That's Christina Bangma's show. And Gabi, I think you are signed up already, are you not?
I'm already signed up. I'm prepping for it as we speak. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, I saw she released the athlete list not too long ago, and I saw you on there. It made me very excited. So, Liefia, Rebecca, look into it. We're getting some clamoring for you to get into the Iron Warrior Pro in May.
I've already told Christina Bangma that I will not be doing her show, unfortunately. Mostly just because, again, I don't want to make that cut more than I have to. So.
Fair enough. So I think what we can do next is I found this YouTube video where, let me go ahead and share that. All right, can y'all see that?
I can see it.
Awesome. So, I mean, just for kind of layman like me, where I just work out in my garage and don't have lots of these implements, I grab a dumbbell, put a fat grip on it, and pretend I'm doing circus. So I like to get some inspiration and, technical advice from people who know what they're doing. And I ran into this the other day and I said, there's a lot I'm doing wrong. And I learned quite a bit here. So Liefia, you want to walk us through kind of this situation? What led you into making this video? Like, is it coaching that you do daily and you just kind of wanted to record it and thought it would be useful for others? But, you know, kind of walk us through how this came to be, because it's really helpful for me.
Yeah, I will. I haven't watched this in quite some time myself, so I don't remember if there was a particular outcome on this one. But if I remember, it was mostly focusing on the clean. This video was filmed by Cerberus. I was visiting a station gym there when I was traveling somewhere, and we just decided it would be nice to put something together. I think this was also pretty recently after I had just set the first world record for the dumbbell press. So that was something that I was getting a lot of attention and questions on. There's kind of two pieces. Actually, it's really helpful that I'm watching it, because now I can remember what I was talking about. There's sort of like two pieces in there. One was explaining like the difference in the clean and drawing the parallel between the kettlebell swing and the dumbbell clean, because a really common fault that I see for many athletes is they're basically using the clean really inefficiently, and a really inefficient clean sets you up to be already tired by the time you hit the rack position and get ready for the press. So I explained how I set up the dumbbell clean and explain like the parallels with the kettlebell clean, which is basically how to position the dumbbell and manipulate the fulcrum of the swing of the dumbbell into your lap so that you can use your hip extension to clean it, as opposed to using your arms and upper back to actually pull the dumbbell up to your shoulder. That efficiency on the first step of the movement allows you to enter the second step of the movement with a little bit more of advantage. And then the part that we're looking at now, which is primarily how to either engage or strengthen or find your rack position. So the other maybe like second biggest fault that I see people making on the dumbbell is they don't customize their rack position. So they just hold the dumbbell in whatever place or orientation. Maybe they saw someone else do it or someone showed them to do it. But the stuff I'm really kind of breaking down there is explaining the difference, that like the ideal position for you to hold the dumbbell most securely, especially if you're going to do a push press or a push jerk, your goal is really to stabilize the dumbbell as much as possible while you use your legs to initiate and continue the press. So what you're really doing when you're trying to strengthen your dumbbell press is find what position to hold that rack or the dumbbell rack, which position, like angle it in or out or up or down based on your strengths and weaknesses to find the most stable rack position.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't compete, but that swing really helped for me. I was standing over it when I was picking it up, and as soon as I saw this, I ran out to the garage and tried it your way, of course. And you know, it's like you say, you're not tired out by the time you get it up into the rack position. And you know, I'm not working with anywhere near the weights you are, but little by little, we'll get there with these technique improvements, right?
Yeah, and I think not only is, you know, like Becca mentioned it, and I think everyone kind of mentioned it, that Strongman has a lot of hidden technicality. There's a lot of things that can be done very easily that people make too difficult because there is so much focus on strength. Everything usually gets focused on just doing more, doing heavier, more effort. When in reality, you have a lot of these lifts that have many, many steps. And if you can clean up efficiency in those steps, not only do you have more energy to perform better, but it's more efficient on time. And there's, you know, as we know with the rep events, there's a lot of events that don't necessarily come down to actually absolute amount of strength, but how quickly you can move, how quickly you can meet the next repetition. And those are all things that can be done with very low effort.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think is a little nuanced for people who have never done it before is the duck under at the end. So how did you make that kind of like muscle memory and just natural?
That's just a carryover from barbell jerks. So the like if you dipping down to drive back up, we call that a push press, right? Where you're initiating the press with your legs and then finishing the lockout with the arm. But the dip and drive and the drop under, that's a jerk. So that's basically just a direct carryover from bilateral jerk, from barbell jerks. But you just learn how to do it with one arm. It's the same skill.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, like I said, very helpful for me. So I'm going to gonna try to implement these things little by little. Isaac, any thoughts you have? I know pressing isn't your favorite thing, Isaac, but you might have some questions or comments here, I would imagine.
No, anybody who knows me knows that with my 7.5 foot wingspan, I do not appreciate overhead pressing at all. Because I'm 6'5" ish with I think it's like a 7'4" wingspan or something. So when I have to do any sort of bench or overhead pressing, it's pretty miserable. But my problem too is, and we had Cecil on last week. He's the guy that got me into strongman, but especially when I was starting out, I would be completely static. I had no dip or anything, and I just sit there and just try and muscle the log up or muscle the dumbbell up, and still got some semi-decent weights up. And then as soon as I actually started practicing doing the dip and everything, you realize it's not near as much like tricep work. You get a lot of quads and a lot of back, especially too. I noticed a lot more than I was expecting. So it's interesting, like you were saying, Liefia, how changing your technique will change where you feel the movement a lot, but it actually makes it if more efficient, I guess. It increases the efficiency of the movement. But
yeah, I feel more like, from a fan's perspective, powerlifting is more you have to do it the specific way, and strongman is by any means necessary. Is that fair?
It's that way in spirit, but we do have a lot of rules.
Okay.
There are a lot of rules, a lot more than you would think, but yeah, essentially we have a lot more liberty than other sports with the movement.
I guess just ask Thor about double dipping in 2017 or whatever it was.
I thought we'd get through at least one stream without bringing that up.
We do have one comment from Zion Gregory. If you want to bring that up on the screen too.
Yeah, the one for Gabi.
Yeah, for Gabi about the weight and height requirements and all that. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so Gabi, the question is, it may be a little hard to read. So being in the Army, do you struggle with the height and weight requirements? And if so, how do you balance comp weight with those expectations?
Absolutely. Excellent question. Many don't actually know that, but yes, military members, we do have to make a certain weight with a specific height. So for my height, I'm 5'4". I'm supposed to weigh anywhere from 117 to 147 pounds. I absolutely do think those weights are outdated. I weigh roughly walking around between 175 and 180. We do have a way of circumventing this. It's called the tape test. So they tape your neck around the smallest part of your waist and then around your hips, and then calculates your body fat percentage. Luckily, I'm still under the requirement of 34% I'm allowed to have right now. According to the tape measures, I am 32%. However, about 2 months ago, I went and did a bod pod, and the results showed that I'm actually 16% body fat, which means that the tape measure method that we use in the Army is very much outdated. I mean, that's a 16% difference. Am I an average soldier? Absolutely not. There's not many that look like me in the Army. However, I do think that the Army needs to make updates to the height and weight requirements.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear for anybody who's ever studied body fat percentage at all that you're not 32% body fat.
Appreciate it. But it's a fair question because a lot of people think because we're on the fitness team, we're exempt from those regulations that requires to be a certain height and weight. And that's absolutely not the case. We still have to take our bi-yearly physical fitness test and then make the height and weight requirements every time when we take that test.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks, Zion. Great question, buddy. The other one was Josh Hillen, again, was mentioning Liefia has a lot of tutorial videos online. She taught me how to use the yoke. And he follows up with a question for Rebecca. Could you talk about the lightweight group you had been doing with Tommy?
Yeah, I'll definitely talk about that. Tommy's actually in my living room right now, which makes that even funnier. But so Tommy Lavelle is the standing under 80 kilo world's strongest man. And Tommy also lives in Brooklyn. And you know, it's funny, like a week ago, we were like looking at each other and we're like, when did we become friends? Because we've known each other probably for a few years now. I remember we were both training at Todd Georgie's gym, New York Strong, up in Mamaroneck, which is like 30 or 40 minutes outside the city. I'm sure we'll get to this at some point today, but living in New York and training strongman is not easy because there are no strongman gyms in New York City. So you have to, if you want to be good in this sport, at some point travel outside of, you know, the main island of Manhattan, whether that's to Brooklyn or, you know, now Tommy opened a gym in Brooklyn, Squats and Science, which is amazing and has everything. And if anyone follows me on Instagram, that's where all my videos are lately. Before that, you had to like travel deep into Brooklyn, or you had to go like up into like, not upstate New York, but like people in Manhattan would call it upstate New York because outside the city, New York State. Yeah, there's me training on the streets of Brooklyn. So yeah, so Tommy and I had trained in the same gyms a few times, and we knew each other, but we were never like close friends necessarily. And then last summer when I moved to Brooklyn, we were doing all this training at my house, and Tommy lives pretty close to me and reached out and was like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but I'm opening a gym really close to where you live. And I love for, you know, y'all's team to come train there and us to have a good relationship together. So as the gym was opening, we started training there a little bit more. It was opening because it had been closed because, you know, the world. And then also because it was just a new location. So we started training there, and Tommy and I got to talking. We were like, oh, I'm going for the lightweight world title this year, and he's actually going back to Worlds to hopefully, you know, get his title again, and I believe that he will. And we were like, you know, wouldn't it be fun to do some sort of buddy comedy? You know, I'm a lightweight, you're a lightweight, we're both really high level. Maybe, I don't know, let's make something happen. And Tommy's really fantastic also with like photography and cameras and recording. He owns some stuff that's some camera equipment that's really, really good. And he knows a few people that are also really, really good at film and things like that. So he was like, listen, I can facilitate most of it. You know, you just have to be there, and we'll manage the social media and stuff together. So we started filming stuff together, and we're doing the Lightweights YouTube show, which is going to be a variety of like funny shit that we do together. And then also, you know, this past week we just put out a video of me going to physical therapy, which is in Manhattan. And it also covers a lot of like interesting stuff about kind of being an athlete in New York City and what that looks like and how it's different from being an athlete somewhere else. You know, we're planning some other funny stuff, and then we're doing a lot of sort of documentary style filming of kind of our whole year, and both of us getting ready for Worlds. And you know, once we both get those trophies, we'll put out a little bit longer of a documentary together. In the meantime, we're just doing the lightweights. And you know, the other thing that we really sort of together and in the entire smaller class athlete community are really pushing for is just this idea that, like, you know, to us having this is gonna be really controversial. So to us, a lot of people know this, we put out a video on it, you know, it's the only sport in the world where they go, well, the big guys get their own show, and everybody else can compete in Florida somewhere. And you know, could you imagine if the UFC was like, oh, the heavyweight men are going to compete at the world championship, and we're going to televise it, we're going to put it out there, it's going to be the biggest event of the year, and everybody else, we're just going to, we'll do a thing in Vegas like for a day. And if you want to find it, you can look it up on YouTube. Like, it's so ridiculous to even have that thought. And so, you know, my coach Alec Pagan and Tommy and I sort of, you know, we are really passionate about getting this conversation going, that like, well, why aren't other, why, you know what, that's fine. If you think World's Strongest Man alone is the best of the best, I'm like, why even have these pro classes in other categories? Like, why give people this sort of pseudo representation or like pseudo feeling of like importance when ultimately all that you're saying at the end of the line is like, well, you guys don't matter as much. And so like that's really what a lot of our content is sort of geared toward also. And so it worked out really well that we're both, you know, lighter athletes. Even when I move up, which I will definitely do at some point, I'll still be a class athlete, right? And so this idea that the class athletes and females, even compared to men, which, you know, as you know, the females in this sport are so underrepresented, it's kind of gross, should all be represented equally. Like, these are equally as impressive athletes, like whether they are the best in their class in the world or they're the best super male in the world. Like, there is nothing less impressive about any of these athletes. And so that's something that our YouTube and our presence, it really is striving for and passionate about, and something that we've been putting out there a lot. And as you can imagine, it has been both very well accepted by a lot of people, and people are fired up for it, and has been equally as controversial. And there are just many people who think those stupid lightweights. So you know, that's mostly what I'm doing with Tommy Lavelle.
No, I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this gathering. So I'm glad you brought that up. Lightweights and women need more attention in the sport, equal attention. And I'm totally with you there. I think I'm following you already, subscribed on YouTube, but if I'm not, shoot me the link. I definitely will. I want to support you on that for sure. That's a great cause. You know, like I said, that's why we're all together here to kind of bring more voice to the lighter weights and to the women in the sport. I actually am trying to get, well, it's just a scheduling thing. They're going to do it. But Camila Fogagnolo and Carl Sherry, who both won Arnold's, they might want in on this too, because they're lightweights as well and very accomplished.
Yeah, we have a pretty good relationship with them. Camila and Carl both support our page very consistently. Camila is a freak athlete. She is just so amazing. And, you know, another person who, her and I have never actually talked about this, but I do know that both of us make some of the bigger weight cuts in the lightweight division. So I feel like deep on the inside, a little bit connected with her in that sense. But she's an amazing athlete, and they definitely are super vocal about these same things. It's been really good having their support.
Yeah, let's definitely all do something together. She's super cool. They both are. I've been talking with them recently about getting them on the channel. It's just they're in Australia, so the time difference is a little tough. But I think it's going to happen this coming week. So yeah, let's definitely all support each other there. Isaac, I think I cut you off.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially we should try and get all their Instagram handles into the description at the bottom of the video, and then also post a link to your videos in the bottom as well, just to try and get some extra publicity out there for you. I don't know if anyone actually reads the descriptions of our live streams, but if they do, hopefully they'll click on a link and explore it a little bit.
Yeah,
we just got to be a little demanding. Everybody watching, read the description on our live stream.
I'll definitely get you guys all the various Instagram handles and YouTubes and things that I've mentioned in this as soon as we get off.
Awesome, for sure. So speaking of YouTube, I had another thing I wanted to share. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And this was Liefia, some pretty good, not only content, but production value. I mean, I don't know who your camera person was, but this looked awesome. So do you want to talk through, first of all, shout out to Sandra Bradley.
That was a tripod.
Oh, was it?
Shout out to Tripod right there.
Yeah. Shout out to Tripod, and shout out to Sandra Bradley for also being an amazing athlete. Do you want to talk through how this came to be? Like, you know, it's cool. It starts off with the car ride up to Roosevelt, and you both got it up, which is freaking amazing. So please describe.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot there. So how did it come about? It was like, so kind of adding on what I had talked about earlier, how my progression through Strongman has kind of been this like fantasy journey in a way where I'm like, well, I wonder if I could do this thing that seems ridiculous. I wonder if I could do that thing that seems ridiculous. And this was after winning the Arnold, after winning World's Strongest Woman after winning quite a few records and things. And so it was kind of on that same progression where I was like, okay, well, what else? Like, what else have I not tried yet? Like, what feat of strength and strongman could we try to do that just seems like ridiculously hard or impossible? And the Roosevelt Stone is interestingly enough a really big icon in strongman, but it's something that pre-exists strongman by a lot. So that was, anyone at some point, anyone who's kind of like solidified themselves as a strongman or like is in the strongman community, they at least know about the Roosevelt Stone. It has a very like legendary status. And the idea of proving stones in general is something that's like symbolically really important to me. So it's always been something that I wanted to do, or not always been something I wanted to do. It was always something that I looked up to and I thought was really cool. And I don't really know if I exactly got the idea, but I was like, I wonder if I could lift the Roosevelt Stone. And up until this point, there had been only one record of a single female holding the stone. My friend Susan Holland Keene, she had lifted the stone off of a platform and carried it a few steps. So she was the first woman ever recorded to hold the stone in her hands and actually like move with it, to carry it. But she hadn't lifted it off the ground. And as far as we knew, no woman had done this, and except the originator of the myth of the Roosevelt Stone. So as we know, the Roosevelt Stone in strongman, like that was just introduced later. Like the Roosevelt Stone's not a strongman original, right? It's something that when World's Strongest Man competition was hosted in Iceland, Magnus for Magnusson wanted to include the Roosevelt Stone as an event because it's a local cultural icon, right? This proving stone. And the myth of the story itself is that actually it was a female that was the first one to lift it, basically to prove herself. And if you're not familiar with it, I encourage people to look up the story. I probably am not getting the details all, I don't have a great storytelling arc, but the story is that this Roosevelt Stone is on a farm or the remnants of an old farm, and it sits outside of a goat pen that was constructed out of boulders. And the legend says that this stone was the door to the goat pen. They would move it out of the way and back in place to let the goats in and out of the farm. And the farmer's daughter, so this is awesome. I'm excited to get to this because this story is super symbolic for strong women. The farmer's daughter wanted to be paid the same as her brother for the work that she did on the farm. And the farmer said that if you can prove that you have the same ability as he can, then you can have that. And so the test was that she had to move the stone, move the door to the goat pen, which was the main like anchor stone, to move the stone, to pick it up and to carry it around the pen. So according to the legend, if it's true,
Did she cut out a little bit, or is that just me?
Yeah, I think she froze.
Uh-oh. It was such a good story, too.
We'll never know.
We'll sit here till the end of time wondering what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit until she clears up her video. So the one thing that I found really interesting about this video, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but and I'm sure she did this because technically it was easier for her, but she picked it up and said, like, no, I want to flip it. And you're like, wait a minute, it's not just enough you're going to pick it up, you want to flip it too? So I found that really interesting.
Yeah, I have to go through and watch this. I haven't seen this one yet. Roosevelt is one of the ones that I would love to go and do sometime as well. But plane tickets and all that sort of stuff right now.
And it's 400 and some odd pounds, right? 450 something?
I don't remember the exact weight of it. I think it's 420 something, somewhere around there. I can't remember the exact weight. Gabi or Rebecca, do you know the exact weight of the Roosevelt?
I don't know offhand, but whatever it weighs, I'm sure Aaron Walkett could take it like 300 feet.
It's funny. I just reached out to her the other day to see if she'd want to do an interview.
Yeah,
she did an extremely good job with the Roosevelt Stone at America's Strongest. Like
did.
Rebecca said, she
Yeah.
went endlessly, and
Wow.
I already decided when she finished it, I was like, I'm not gonna go that far.
I think she posted a training video like a few weeks after that too. I think with a 400-pound Roosevelt. She took it off a block, but like she's, in my opinion, she's one of the best Roosevelt carriers that has existed ever in the women's strong women ever.
It's funny. I think I know which clip you mean, and I didn't know of Erin yet at that point. And a friend of mine actually sent it to me and said, "Oh, check this out." And it was for something, and I said, "But that's impossible. Like that's too heavy. Nobody does that." But apparently they do.
Yeah, she does.
Liefia just had a blackout.
Yeah, she just messaged us saying that they have a blackout right now.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, we got a lot of great stories from her while she was here. Why don't we move on then?
Yeah. Well, maybe before we move on, if you want to just at least highlight her Instagram account and if everyone saw her YouTube channel as well. So if you're watching this right now, please make sure you go and subscribe and follow to Liefia, Gabi, and Rebecca as well. So just plugging that out there right now.
Okay, so Liefia is liefiasaurus. This is her Instagram right here. So you definitely want to go follow her. She's got a lot of cool stuff on there. Rebecca is Becca Lorch right here. And Gabi is Gabi _ the Austrian Oaktress. Like the Austrian Oak Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I feel like a lot of people don't understand what my username is exactly that. But I'm originally from Austria, born and raised, came to the States when I was 19. So I've always really looked up to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's known as the Austrian Oak. So therefore I chose the Austrian Oaktress as my Instagram name.
Yeah, see, Gabi, it helps that I've interviewed you before, so I know things to bring up. So the next topic I wanted to talk about, Rebecca, was there is a post you have, this one. And so it was about making weight, but I just thought generally like, oh, it's cool. You do a bunch of coaching. And then you mentioned that you manage like a big group of trainers, or you did. And so I just wanted to, whenever I come across a coach, I ask like, what's your general coaching philosophy?
Sure. So I actually do mostly these days nutrition coaching. I have my master's in nutrition counseling. So that's pretty much mostly what I do now. I work under Alec Pagan's team, RPE 11, who has been my coach, as you guys know now, for several years. So he is doing most of the athlete type, like the training. He has another coach that's doing some like less elite athletes. She's coaching, and he's coaching pretty much all the elite athletes on the team. And then I do most people's nutrition, and I also coach a lot of other people in nutrition who aren't necessarily athletes. I specialize in nutrition counseling. So that means that I work with everybody from high-level athletes to Gen Pop people who just want to lose some weight, to people with like eating disorders, for instance. So that is what I do for work. I came from managing a team of 30 to 40 personal trainers at a high-end fitness facility, where I was handling a lot of their education. I've been a personal trainer myself for probably going on a decade now. So you know, for the most part now I'm just doing nutrition. I really have found it super rewarding, and I really like, I love sort of being a part of people's experience when things click. And the thing that I love about nutrition is that it's not very cut and dry. I think a lot of coaches will have you believe that, you know, the same nutrition should work for everybody. And that is very much not the case. You know, you could have two people with the exact same body composition who do the exact same workouts every day, and you could put them on the same diet. One person could, their weight could tank, and one person could gain 4 pounds overnight. So I do love that there's a bit of a problem solving component with just about every person, every client. And that's just really what I enjoy. Nutrition is always a little bit of problem solving, and you have to look at it super holistically, because it's never just, all right, calories in, calories out. It is a little bit, and that will work for a lot of people, but it's certainly not the most, the best thing you could do for a high level athlete, for instance, who, the small bits and pieces matter, what's going into that athlete on a regular basis. And then, you have to take into account, well, what are these people's workouts looking like? What is their day-to-day life looking like? Especially in the last year, people's lives have really changed. I mean, even me personally, I'm not as active as I used to be. I used to walk around a gym all day at work. So that has been challenging in my own nutrition. So looking at people's stress sometimes is huge. I have clients who will be going through really, really stressful times in their lives, and they just, no matter what, they're like, I cannot lose weight. And then, that whatever that thing was that they were so stressed out about finally happens, and 2 weeks later they're down like 8 pounds. There's so many factors at play in nutrition, which I've just found to be so fascinating and so exciting. And this idea that I always have to troubleshoot with people, and I get to be on a team with a person, really essentially on their trip to wherever it is that they're trying to go, whether that's getting bigger or smaller or leaner, or sometimes it's purely aesthetic, sometimes it's performance oriented. Some people are just trying to maintain, but they're trying to get stronger and recomp a little bit. So all those things are the most exciting for me, because I get to kind of be in it with someone, really, and like immerse myself in whatever the experience is that they're having, because I have to kind of be fully immersed in their life to be able to give them the best product back. So I just love it. I really am not doing too much personal training anymore like I did for most of the last decade. My heart's not in it as much as it used to be. I have like my same, kind of 5 to 10 clients who are in and out through the course of the year that I adore and I love working with. But other than that, like mostly into nutrition these days. And I really, really have been enjoying sort of fine tuning, going back to that specific post, fine tuning my weight cut protocols for athletes. As you guys have heard 18 times now, I make very big cuts. And a lot of people will sort of heed against that. Do I think that all athletes should make huge cuts to make weight? Absolutely not. But I would never tell anyone that. And I think that only the most elite people should be the ones doing it. But I think if you're a coach that works with weight class athletes and you don't promote high level athletes using weight cut protocols, particularly learning how to move fluid really easily in and out of their body, you're doing them a huge disservice. Because usually the biggest people in the class win. Not always, but most often, the bigger people in the class are doing better. So that's kind of my shtick in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of great information. It was interesting you mentioned that you've worked with people with eating disorders before, and that certainly takes a special kind of technique and compassion, right? And so I was just wondering, have you ever run across Jules Mansfield before? Because she competes strongwoman and she works with people with autoimmune disorders. So I'm just glad that all of those populations are getting attention from, folks like yourselves with the right kind of education and compassion.
I actually haven't. I have no idea who that is. I'm also really bad at like the internet. I feel like people ask me all the time if I know who like other athletes are or other coaches or whatever, and I'm just like, who, what? If you look at like people I follow, it's like mostly people that I know in person and like 5 companies that I buy a lot of stuff from.
That's funny. I'm the opposite. I had this one person who I know really well in real life who found me on Instagram, and I was shocked. I'm like, oh my God. So Liefia, welcome back.
Hi, I'm back.
Awesome.
I'm probably not as audible, but we just had a power blackout.
Why?
Yeah. No, I think
I'm calling back in from my phone now.
All right, cool. No, the camera looks fine. We were just talking about coaching, so Rebecca was kind of giving her her general coaching philosophy, and I believe you coach as well, right? So do you want to speak on that?
About my my philosophy on coaching. Sorry, catch me up
Yeah,
a little bit better.
like coaching clients, not being coached yourself.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, what about it? Just like what I like about it, or how I do
Yeah,
it?
like I guess like when a potential client comes to you, like what do you use to judge what their needs are and how to address them best? Kind of like, are you a shouter? Are you more of a compassionate coach? Like those sorts of things.
Okay. Yeah. So like just describing my style and my process with coaching. So, I didn't think about this myself, but I think I'm being described as I'm a very holistic coach. Like my approach to helping people perform better. A lot like when we were talking about with the dumbbell, like a lot of the things that people need to improve their performance are not necessarily getting bigger and getting stronger. Like everyone needs to do that all the time in strongman, but it's like eliminating friction, making things more efficient, right? Finding errors in your technique where you're wasting energy and wasting time and getting those out of the way. So I try to do the same thing with my clients in general, right? Like my approach towards programming and towards planning for them is I kind of try to like get inside their mind and their life and see what's going on in their life, in their perspective, from their goals to their outcomes to the processes, and just try and figure out like the easiest way to get them improving better. And sometimes that is specific types of programming. Sometimes that is like isolated and targeted things that we're doing in the gym or technique wise, but sometimes it's also very different. Sometimes we need to really focus on that client's like sleep and stress management, or sometimes they need help with nutrition, or sometimes they need to just kind of change their mindset, understand their goals better. So I really just try to look at everything that's going on. On that same note, I don't try to overstep my bounds. So like I'm not also a nutritionist. I'm not also a physical therapist. I'm not taking on all those roles for those people, but I'm analyzing all of those areas because I really feel like I really believe that the common goal of all strength training should be consistency, because everybody, absolutely everybody at all levels can get incredibly strong. All you need is time, right? You just need to consistently show up and be able to add that stress to the body and be able to adapt to it properly. So, that level of time, the scale of that time is different for everybody. But the reality is, like, if you keep showing up in training every day, you're going to get stronger day over day, week over week, year over year. And as that time adds up, you're going to be really, really strong. So the number one priority in everyone's training should be, how can we get them to train the most consistently for the longest amount of time? So that usually means moderating people's training a lot, because a lot of people, especially if they're at the intermediate level or above, are doing too much stuff all the time. And most people are taking the approach like, well, I need to get stronger, so I need to do more stuff. I need to do more and more effort, more grit, more punishment. And for a lot of reasons, both physical and mental, those aren't sustainable. So the best path for an athlete is the one that's going to take them the farthest amount of time.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up reducing friction. I think that's something that's not spoken about enough. Eddie Hall talks about it with the deadlift, where he uses Vaseline in his armpits, for example. So I think that's things that, kind of the layperson doesn't think about, reducing friction.
Yeah, well, I think he's talking very physically about friction in that situation, where I was talking more symbolically about friction. But yes, it's the same concept. Like, even in specific lifts, like a lot of times the way to get better is to just figure out which obstacles are in your way and get rid of them, right? You don't always, like, yeah, we all want to get stronger, and that's the point. We're all doing that. We're getting strong all the time. But like, the answer isn't always getting stronger. And I think I'm a perfect example of that, because in every major competition that I've won, I've never been by any means the actual strongest person. Like, statically, I've never been able to squat or deadlift or even lift as much as most of the people that I've been able to defeat in competition. And the reason is because I'm able to find those small roadblocks and get them out of the way, and then be more efficient with how I move, or more strategic.
Yeah, I mean, we brought up Magnus for Magnuson earlier. I think he was the same way. Like, everybody would say he probably wasn't the strongest person there, but he was the most clever, in other words.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously being the strongest will help. So like, to say that, you should solve all your problems in competition by just getting stronger, like, yeah, that'll work. It's just like the most expensive and most difficult way to get better, right? It takes the most effort. So you can keep working on that one, but there's also usually a lot of things that are in your way. So as it regards to coaching, that's my style, is to take a very holistic approach to not just the athlete and like their physical body, and their physical program, but who they are as a person, how they're viewing competition, what they actually want out of it, and just trying to find a way to like make all those things fit together, right? So they can enjoy themselves better.
Yeah, so Josh Hillen in the comments says, how modest, isn't she the Arnold champion? Yes.
Well, and he says,
but that's
the
actual
Arnold
thing.
champion.
I think,
Oh,
well,
sorry.
he's saying modest because I said I wasn't that strong, but like, I'm being very, I think, factual in that situation. Like, if we go back to those competitions and I look at the people that I competed against, and we stacked up our actual static numbers, max squat, max press, max deadlift, the things that most people would use as metrics to determine someone's viability in those competitions, I would not outperform them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So the other thing I was wondering, so Gabi, for you, we've brought up nutrition a little bit. How much focus do you place on nutrition versus training? Is it balanced? Is kind of one just more get more of your attention than the other? How do you balance those things?
I want to say, my personal, it's very balanced, in the sense that I've adopted a lot of knowledge when I was bodybuilding. So I do still count my macros on a daily basis. I do follow a meal plan that I've established, and I think it's actually more than 50% of your focus should be on nutrition, because especially with us, with lifting constantly very heavy, I think it really affects our performance over time. And if you don't perform well in the gym, I think then you're having a problem with your mental state, saying, oh my God, I'm getting weaker. So everything kind of goes downhill from there. And what also a big influence on everything makes is sleep. As soldiers, we generally don't get much sleep. We're looking at 3, 4, 5 hours a night. So that's another reason I think they established that we're a fitness team and actually pulled us here to Fort Knox, Kentucky, is so we would have our focus specifically just on training and get those 7 to 9 hours of sleep that in a perfect world you could use to actually be better at the gym and perform better. But diet, absolutely, it's very important to me. I do have cheat meals throughout the week. I'm not gonna say I'm as strict as I was back in my bodybuilding days. I do have a social life. I go out for dinner, but I do still watch when I go out and just don't go overboard.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I think, Isaac, unless you had anything else you wanted to add, I think maybe we wrap up and give the ladies each a chance to kind of talk some inspiring stuff to our audience, right? So we all got together today to show you some of the most accomplished strong women in the world, so they can give you lessons on how hard work can help you to attain your goals. And I think, Rebecca, would you like to go first? I just kind of some parting words for the value of hard work, and how strong women deserve attention, just like the strong men do.
Yeah. So it's funny, like a week ago, I was asked a similar question. What advice would I give people? And I was like, I don't know. But I think for me, I was a person who, like, for all intents and purposes, like, probably should not have been as good as I am, mostly because of my really bad injury history. Like, I mean, there was a point when I was like, like, I had a doctor who was like, who I went back to him and I was like, well, I can only bend my knee like 40 degrees. And he was like, well, honestly, that's better than I thought it was going to be. So, I mean, like, I was not supposed to squat or run or walk under a heavy yoke or be able to deadlift, as much as I can, or do any of these things. And, the one thing that I do always say when I'm kind of asked this question is like, be relentless, like, at that time, I think a lot of times people think like, okay, well, XYZ told me, or XYZ means that I shouldn't be able to do these things, or I shouldn't do them because, like, you know, if you're doing something that ultimately is to make yourself better or make yourself feel better about yourself or make yourself feel more empowered, the worst thing that is going to happen when you put a lot of work into it is that it might not happen. And even then, you put a lot of work in for something that was important to you. And you know what? Most of the time, if you put a lot of hard work into something, you are almost never going to have zero results. So I just think no matter, yeah, I'm very much kind of this story, not to sound like cliche, but like against all odds, right? Like I just showed up every single day and I worked really hard through pain and discomfort and being frustrated. You know, even now, last week I had to take an entire week off training because like my knee that I like exploded in a motorcycle accident, all of a sudden 10 years later was so painful that I could hardly walk for a whole week. So like, yeah, it's super frustrating. And it was more frustrating 8 years ago when that happened once a month or, you know, every other day. But like, I just think if you feel like you have shitty odds, working really hard to overcome those odds is not going to end badly, you know, like, so just do it. And who cares if that means you can lift 200 pounds instead of 500, but you used to lift 100. Like, just every time you go in and you work really hard and you're super consistent, like, you know, Liefia was saying, consistency is so important and time is so important. Like, just go in and do the work that you know is going to get you somewhere, and it will get you somewhere, no matter what anyone says. So that's really like sort of my biggest piece of advice that I tell people. No matter the odds, no matter what you think, work hard, do it often, do it for a long time, and it will produce results. So that's, I think I should leave it there.
That's great advice. Awesome advice. Gabi, same question for you. Looking back on your road to success, like what would you tell people to inspire them toward their goals?
So I actually just recently had a woman reach out to me and she said, hey, I have my first strongman competition coming up in 2 weeks. She was obviously a novice, had never done any sort of competition before. And I told her to not look at the competition as a competition against somebody else, but yourself. As long as you PR every event or you do better than you did in training, that you should see that as a win. It doesn't matter if you take last place, because as long as you beat yourself, that means you won. You took first place in your own competition. And she went to the competition and I think she took third. So she took podium, but she reached back out to me and she thanked me and she said, I had so much fun because I did not stress about anybody else but myself. And so for anybody out there who is wanting to compete or is just wanting to reach their own little milestone, don't worry about anybody else. Do what makes you happy. Don't listen to society telling you can't have muscles or you can't do something as a woman. Just do it. Prove them wrong. That's my message.
Great advice. And Liefia, how about you? What would you say is your parting message on, you know, helping to inspire people to achieve their goals? And if you want to throw in something about why strong women deserve attention in the sport.
Ooh, cool. Well, so what Beck and Gabi already said were already great advice, along the lines of, you know, persistence and just kind of setting up. Actually, my advice is don't really set expectations for yourself, but actually reconsider what they are completely. I think that there is, everything that we look at, like when you look at something that you want to do or something that you think that might not be possible, you're usually setting up an expectation, and those expectations are pretty much placed on us by other people. We don't, you know, imagine up something new, you know. So just like if starting out in strongman, if you're like, I want to be good at that, or I want to be strong, or I want to be the strongest person in the world, like in order to do that, when most people are going to look at it and say, I can't do that. But the concept of why you can't do that is only established based on things that other people have told or shown you, you don't really know what's possible. Am I out again?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
You're
Well,
good.
the screen froze, so
We caught it all. No, all great advice. Yeah. The reason why I like to get gatherings like this together, and I've told Gabi this before, I have a 4-year-old daughter and I need her to know that things are possible when she grows up. So this is why I kind of like to get these gatherings with really accomplished women to kind of share their experiences. And, you know, Isaac and I are so grateful for all of you coming on today. It's been a blast, and I'm sure the audience is really going to love it. Before we go, Isaac, we should show how to get in touch with all of these lovely champions here. So let me go ahead and share again. So for anybody watching, make sure, is that sharing? Yeah. Make sure to follow Rebecca on Instagram at Becca Lorch. She is America's strongest lightweight woman. Make sure to follow Gabi Burgholzer, also 2020 America's strongest woman in the middleweight, and she is Gabi _ the Austrian Oaktress. And make sure to follow Liefia Ingalls. She is liefiasaurus on Instagram, and she is the Arnold Pro and strongest woman in the world winner middleweight, and also world's strongest woman middleweight. So make sure and follow all of them. Make sure and like this live stream if you like that we're bringing this kind of quality to you every week, and folks with this kind of experience to share for all of you. Like the live stream, subscribe to my blog, Strongest Man, and then go over and subscribe to Isaac at Hunger Smash Fitness. We appreciate you joining. Guests, we appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this wonderful information for us. And Isaac, do you have any parting words?
Actually, I was kind of gonna tag onto the back of everything that they said, and one of the reasons why I kind of got into heavy weightlifting too is like I work in physical therapy, and it's so interesting because I've had truck drivers, I've had lifelong yoga instructors, I've had people from all sorts of backgrounds come, and they need knee replacements and hip replacements and all this other stuff. And then I've had former powerlifters and stuff coming, and they're in the same boat. And so when I first started getting interested in lifting heavy weights, everyone was like, oh, well, you're gonna blow your joints out. And I was like, well, you know what, like, people from every single background blow their joints out. Why not at least enjoy life and have fun before I blow my joints out? And then at least I'll have some memories to look back on. And there's a lot that you can do, with physical therapy and with everything else to increase your longevity, to actually, postpone those permanent injuries, as it were. But that was a big part of it, is I was like, just take your time, play it smart, kind of like you guys have said, and definitely surround yourself with people who are also trying to improve themselves and get a little bit better, and can rein you in when you need it, or push you up when you need that as well. But I mean, the big thing is just have fun with it. Nobody's out there lifting the Roosevelt Stone because it's a life or death situation. They're out there having fun, and that's it, is like, just get to the point where you're having fun with it, I guess. So yeah, that was kind of my take on all that, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I got to tell my story now. So I've never competed, but when I was a little kid, I was an only child, right? So I had my little bench press set, but what I enjoyed was I would take my dad's keys, put the car in neutral, and I'd push it up and down the driveway. So, it's not like truck pulls or that kind of weight, but it was fun for me as a little kid, and that kind of stuck with me as I grew up. And now as an adult, I have my own family. We needed a retaining wall built, and I got a bunch of stones over there. They're not Hoosevelds, they're maybe 90, 100-pound stones, but I moved 30 of them and made a wall where most people would grab a wheelbarrow or something. It's just like Isaac said, it's fun. And that's why I immerse myself in this culture. So thanks again, all of you, for joining us. Any parting words? Oh, the one thing we should say is, what would any of you like to promote? Please feel free, go ahead. Sponsors, anything you would like to promote, feel free now, whoever would like to go first.
I guess I'll go first. I definitely want to shout out my two sponsors, Viking Strength Nutrition. If you follow me, they're listed right in my bio, and BTB Stone Sleeves. So shout out to them. Big shout out to RPE11 and Alec Pagan, my coach, and his team. you can find them both also on Instagram at Alec Jose and at RPE11. And then last big shout out that I already talked about a bunch is the lightweights. Definitely follow lightweights on Instagram and YouTube. It's LITE because I don't want to talk about it, but apparently there's a band named Lightweights. So we're LITE weights. Follow us.
Awesome. And for all three of you, whatever you're about to promote, shoot me over all the information on Instagram and we'll put it all in the description for sure. Gabi, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I would like to give a huge shout out to the US Army Warrior Fitness team. You can follow them on Instagram and follow our progress. Like I said, we have strength athletes as well as CrossFitters or functional athletes that are called. Then Kinda Fit, Kinda Fat apparel. They're my sponsors. Love their products. Good quality shirts and shorts and socks. And I want to actually give a huge shout out also to my coaches, Kim and Adam Dirks. Kim, amazing presser. Adam, world-renowned deadlifter. Thank you so much for everything you've done so far for me. Really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Great. And Liefia, who would you like to shout out?
Can you still hear me? I don't see the button.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a nightmare over here. Yeah, I'd love to. So if anyone's interested in working with my company, Unicorn Strength Training, I have a team of coaches on board, and we are at unicornstrength.com. Contact through the website if you have information or just to learn more about what we do. In terms of shout outs and thanks, I owe so many thanks to my sponsor, Cerberus. Cerberus has been a sponsor of mine since way before anybody else would support me. And they've done a really awesome job throughout my career of not just obviously providing me with equipment and things that I need to get the job done, so to speak, in competition, but with a ton of moral support, a ton of backing for all of those projects I've done that other people said, that sounds crazy, you're not going to do that. And Cerberus was always like, heck yeah, that sounds great, we're on board. So they've been really awesome company. And also more recently, I've been working with Death Before Dishonor, which is a company makes sick t-shirts, cool, fun artwork, stuff to wear. That's just a fun company to be with, but they're also a very passionate company that has a lot of interest in really supporting homegrown athletes and specifically in strongman. So they've put a ton of effort, money, and time into helping grow the sport, and I'm really proud to be a part of that as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, great. And if any of those companies are looking for a video production YouTubers to team up with, I'm your guy. Awesome. Well, thanks again to all of you for joining. It's really, really an honor for us to have three ladies as accomplished as yourselves take time out of your busy schedules to come join us and share all of your experience with our audience. So thanks again. Hopefully, maybe after your next competitions, we sync up again.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.